This is the Doc Nation podcast. We are a movement founded by doctors, for doctors, dedicated to empowering medical professionals to reclaim control over healthcare decisions and advocating for their fair share of the industry's resources. Please note, the views expressed are those of Doc Nation and not necessarily those of our guests or referenced health centers.
John, it's great to have you on with us, and we'd love to have you share with everybody tuning in. How'd you get involved in healthcare, and what's your current role?
Well, thank you. It's always great to be with you. Thank you for inviting me again. So the way I got started in healthcare was after going to university, graduate school. I got involved in organizing, not in healthcare, but after about 10 years of organizing in manufacturing and transportation, I took a job with the Healthcare Workers Union, 1199 in Pennsylvania. And on my very first organizing campaign, here's how I got involved in healthcare. I met a woman who I'll never forget, two women, Teresa Malafarina and her roommate, Sherry McHale. They were in their early 40s, working in a for-profit nursing home on top of a coal slag in Frackville, Pennsylvania, which is the old anthracite region of Pennsylvania. They worked in a for-profit nursing home. They had called the union. I met them near their home in Ashland. So I met them and I said, so what's on your mind? Why did you call the union? And here's what they said. We don't have enough washcloths to take care of our patients. And we need to do something about that because, we don't get paid a lot of money. Our benefits are not great, but we've both worked there for 20 years and we love our job, but we can't continue to do our job unless we have more support from the management. So the long and the short of it is that that was not the answer I was expecting. But since that time, which is now more than 40 years ago, that has been what got me involved in healthcare. Understanding that the people who provide healthcare in this country often have no voice about the most important things, which is how do they care for their patients? And that has been true every single day since then.
And I think that's really important. I was going to mention what you mentioned right at the end there is their biggest concern. They might not have good benefits. They weren't getting paid much, but they didn't call you until they weren't able to take care of their patients. I think that's what a lot of people need to realize in healthcare is the reason physicians are getting frustrated is the patient care is very much starting to be eroded away. And we can see, we see what's going on, right? We're the canary in the tunnel. We see where this could take us in the next 5 to 10 years if there isn't a change, and it's not a good place. And that's why we're reaching out to people like you, John, for help, people that understand how to bring a group of people together that don't have a voice, give them a voice, and hopefully change things for the better. And in this case, it's not even for the better of the employee, which is the physician. It's for the better of the patient, who is actually the customer. So that's really how healthcare is. Those are the people that go into healthcare. They care about the patient.
If you remember back to the podcast with Dr. John Nickel, and that was his main thing. There was a number of things that he had an issue with himself that were affecting him and his bottom line.
Right.
But his voice didn't become louder until his inability to provide care to the physician in the way that he thought was the best. Administration was the deterrent.
Yeah, once you start talking about the patient and the patient not getting what they need, and him feeling responsible, personally responsible for not being able to deliver what the patient needs. The patient's suffering now as a result of that. That's really where it struck a chord. So John, tell us about current role. How are you engaging with healthcare today? How's that changed? Does it look similar from when you got started?
Well, I would say very little has changed, sadly. In fact, I think things have changed for the much worse. So I spent many decades in the labor movement. My last and probably most impactful on me personally was when I led the labor management partnership at Kaiser Permanente for almost a decade. And I've been at Cornell University now I'm starting my 12th year this week. And my work at Cornell is exclusively on healthcare. And I work with members of the management of healthcare, the labor side of healthcare, government policy, research writing, consultation, facilitation. And through that work, I'm exposed every day to the on the ground, from, I would say, the front line to the C-suites of the healthcare industry, hearing from people who are looking for support on how to have a better relationship between frontline people and executives in the workplace to deal with the crises that are largely generated from external forces of financing, insurance, regulation, competition, technology, and as all of you know, all of those things have become overwhelming with almost no cohesive response. It's as though every physician, every nurse, every organization has to start from scratch every year to try to figure out how to survive in that environment, which creates a tremendous amount of unnecessary conflict. So I try to bring a view that instead of having conflict between labor and management or executives and frontline, let's focus on working together in an environment that we should try to control together as opposed to separately. And I'll just finish by saying this last year and a half, no surprise to you, is that the majority of interest that I get from people who call us at Cornell are from physicians, overwhelmingly.
Interest in terms of getting help because they see those things wrong in the workplace.
Yes, as my department chair says, well, John, we work in a world here at Cornell ILR where a lot of people call us for help, but they don't really know what they need. And I think that that's probably true. I think physicians who call you and they have a lot in their mind, they have a lot of pressure, and they know they need something, they don't know exactly what.
That's right. I say it all the time.
Yeah. And I say that is not a hindrance, that's an opportunity.
That's right.
We shouldn't look at it as a hindrance because the opportunity exists for us to do things that are innovative, new, and frankly, we shouldn't do old things anymore. The old things have obviously collapsed in terms of their effectiveness. And there's a lot more on that, but let's keep
Well,
going.
you were talking about the conflict. So you're encountering conflict. That's obviously the issue. There's a disconnect between managers and the frontline workers. What do you see as a pathway, some steps that can be taken to see improvement for the benefit of patients?
Well, that's a tough hill to climb because we all experience conflict in our lives, right? Within our families, within our communities, within our workplaces. Conflict is I don't want to say it's normal, but it's everywhere.
It is normal. It is. It just call it what it is. It's normal. We should expect it. It's going to exist. It's what do we do with it?
That's right. And I look at conflict as an opportunity because if you just remain in conflict, which is easy to do, right? People just take their positions and they come out fighting. And at the end of it, people tend to be more beaten up and not in a solution mode. So I try very hard to work with parties on identifying mutual interests, and which is not hard to do. People at the front line and executives often have mutual interests. So that's what I try to promote in my work and in the institute I work at Cornell, which is to help people understand that by continuing to have conflict, the deep-seated causes of the conflict are never going to get resolved. So what does that look like? What it looks like is, for example, using the example uh, uh, which is pretty common, which is to have parties participate in a facilitated dialogue to identify problems they can actually solve together. They might not be global in nature, but if you can get people to work on smaller projects that have impact, they learn that they can work on larger things as well. And ultimately, what that's going to be, I think, is executives and frontline doctors working together to influence those external factors like intervention of insurance, other regulations, and so on. Not that they're going to be able to change the world overnight, but I can't think of a more powerful group than physicians and their management counterparts working together to solve these issues.
So one thing I've always been interested in with unions is the power to strike, right? And how well it works and how well it could actually cause more conflict sometimes. Do you think there is a place where you ever see physicians getting, or healthcare workers in general, getting fed up enough to have a strike? I actually just read and we're recently the residencies. There's been some strikes in the residencies against their organizations. Do you ever see a collaboration of physicians striking, and what would that mean?
Well, we do see it rarely. You're right. There's a strike going on at the University of Buffalo right now, medical school. And there's a potential strike at the Children's Hospital in Philadelphia among residents. They haven't struck yet. I would say, though, that strikes among physicians are extremely rare, and they should be rare. I think that while it's somewhat controversial, I suppose, but the right to strike, is a part of all modern societies. If you take away people's right to strike, then they have no power. But I think the key is to do everything possible to avoid it by coming up with solutions. And I think most importantly, having the doctor speak as a really strong collective voice about what they want to see changed. I happen to believe that physicians may be the most powerful group of employees in society to be able to make change in healthcare. I think they know that too. I think what they're not used to is moving from the consciousness of being an individual practitioner to a collective voice. And I understand that. You've been trained to be individual scientists and healers, and you go to bed at night after healing people every day and you feel great. The problem is that that's becoming, unfortunately, more and more difficult to do.
Yeah, and I think maybe the physician thinks they have that power singularly, but most people do not. Most physicians I know do not think the opportunity to come together is even a remote possibility right now. And that's why they are where they are. I mean, you take CMS cuts every year. We take less and less from insurance every year, and there is no pushback. So I actually think that's where the biggest gap is between an actual resolution to what's going on in healthcare. Is physicians just need to understand that, hey, it's not going to take that much. You have the power. I don't think a lot of physicians realize they have the power. That's where I think a lack is.
And before we get too close to the end, I just wrote an article recently about something that I think is important for physicians to think about. I don't claim to be an expert, but I know something about physician compensation. And from my reading about the root causes, and not the root causes, but the underlying themes, if you will, of how physician compensation is constructed in the country today, it's largely based on increasing productivity. I believe that productivity in healthcare is important, as it is in any business, but there's a whole nother school of thought. And that is that an emphasis on quality improvement and changing the system so that quality improvement is actually the focus, productivity will then increase.
Of course.
As opposed to productivity increases does not result in improved quality.
No, productivity increases and RVU increases and mandates have been proven to decrease patient care. But also quality improvement measures, which have been being put into place for the last 15 years, are not written by physicians. They're being written by the administration, and they're ridiculous. So one of my quality improvement measures is to ask every patient if they're currently smoking, if they stop smoking, to ask them about weight loss, all those kind of things. Every time they come in, I don't need to, that's a waste of time, and it doesn't help me take care of that patient better. Listen, the first time we see the patient, yes, we should gather all that data, but there needs to be more thought into what those quality measures actually are, and it needs to be done purely by physicians. That roundtable, whoever puts it together, of 12, 15 physicians, need to be pure physicians, and say, hey, this is how we're going to really rate what is good quality care. Because the other thing that happens with quality improvement measures is, let's say there's someone that's really sick and the surgeon needs to do the surgery to save them, but there's a 50-50 chance that patient might die. If the surgeon does the surgery and the patient dies, that's a ding against them, even though they tried. So what do? They don't even try, because they don't want to have that measure against them.
So one of the challenges I put out to all of us is this, that, there are quality measures, there are quality bonuses, there are quality incentives built into some systems. I think it's time that at least it's just one of many focuses for doctors to build a collective voice, is to really take control of the issue of how quality is delivered, how it's measured, and how incentives are actually meaningful as opposed to what they are now, which are largely either insufficient or missing the mark. And I think, to me, if physicians came together around that, that's what I mean about how they can change healthcare. Mm-hmm. I think it means that their lives would become much more compatible with what it means to be a physician. And it's directly related to their compensation. So they have a self-interest, and they have a broader social interest in the same thing.
Well, John, this theme that you're sharing with regard to voice, physician's voice, the doctor's voice, it's something that I feel like you made it sound like as if they know they have the power, but maybe it's they don't know how to harness the power. Anthony, your perspective is maybe they don't know that they have the power.
Yeah.
There's a missing piece here, it seems like. And we need to spend more time with you in the future unpacking this more, because how do doctors get their voice back? What can they do? Who can help them? What steps can they take to harness that voice? That voice is there. We would agree with you. It should be the most powerful voice. There should be no healthcare without doctors driving it, because if they don't play in the game, there is no game. So what can they do if they don't know how to find their voice or to get their voice heard? If they're by themselves, if there's only a few of them, the administration won't listen to them. There are people like Doc Nation who, and John, this team right here, we can help you have your voice. You do not have to do this alone. It will take a collective. It doesn't have to be huge. It can be a small group, but there are things you can do. And I think that's kind of the missing piece here is, and we'll spend more time on this in the future, doctors getting their voice back. That's going to be a huge part of what we do this year, next year, and the days to come.
I agree. I mean, it's not simple. And quite frankly, if it was simple, it would have been done already.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't have Doc Nation.
Yeah.
I say often, the existence of this company is actually kind of sad. The existence of this company is to fight. And, we're fighting on behalf of the most, as you put earlier, John, the most important group in society. You didn't say important, you said something else, but I'm going to tweak it a little bit. It's the most important group in society. So thank you for your time today, John. We appreciate you. You've been very, very supportive of us. You've brought knowledge that we didn't have, and expertise and relationships that we didn't have before you, and we're very grateful for you.
Thank you, John.
Great to be with you, and best of everything.
Bye. This has been the Doc Nation podcast. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening to us. Your feedback really helps us reach more listeners like you. We'd also love to hear your thoughts and any topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and to join the conversation. Thanks for listening.